playoffs, Mitch, and the Denver Nuggets taking home the Larry O'Brien Trophy on Monday night, winning their first NBA title in franchise history. This is a franchise that had never even been to the NBA Finals until this season, led by the two-time MVP Nikola Jokic and Finals MVP in this series. And they handled the Miami Heat in 5 games. And Mitch, they handled everybody in the playoffs, frankly. They had 4 total losses in this playoff run. They completed this championship run in 20 games. Since the expansion of the playoffs to the full 7-game series in 2003, there have only been 3 teams that have won an NBA title in 20 games or less. It's the 2006-2007 Spurs, the 2016-2017 Golden State Warriors, and the 2022-2023 Denver Nuggets. I mean, this is an incredibly impressive run that we saw from Denver, culminating in this 5-game handling of a Miami Heat team. And a great story, really, for the NBA, and something I really didn't see coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all underestimated what the Nuggets were capable of doing, and they really kind of flew under the radar with how dominant they were. We weren't talking about Nuggets dominating teams. It was kind of they got by the Lakers in 4, but the Lakers, they were a play-in team. Okay, we move on from that. We talk about all these different series, and we don't really actually sit back and realize, oh my God, how dominant they actually were. And it was self-evident from the word go here in these NBA finals. They go ahead to take game 1 by 11 points, and the Heat played them tough, but the Nuggets did exactly what they were supposed to do, which was play like the best team in the league, and they did that for 5 games. Even that game 2 loss, it was a narrow win for the Heat, only by 3. So the better team won in this series. I know we both had the Heat to go in this series, but the better team and probably the right team won this series. And hats off to the Nuggets bringing home their first Larry O'Brien.
Yeah, absolutely. I have always felt like the NBA playoffs is maybe one of, if not the most true playoff systems that truly crowns the best team. I don't believe that you can win an NBA title without truly being the best team, because you have to win 16 games, face 4 different teams over 4 7-game series. And if you make it out of all of that, you are the best team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it in my mind, because that's the most grueling. There's no flukiness with that. There's no, you got one game in the NFL and wow, you just had them that day and they were off. You have to earn it. And so, yes, absolutely, the Denver Nuggets were the team that deserved to win the title. And Mitch, they were probably the team we should have saw coming all season long, right? I mean, they're the best record in the West. They're the number 1 offense in the NBA this season. And the reason why we didn't believe it is because we just hadn't seen it. It's just as simple as that, right? And it's the reason why I doubted the Denver Nuggets, because again, this was a franchise that hadn't even been to the finals, let alone done anything, right? So I think for the vast majority of NBA fans, and I can speak for myself in this, it was like, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm going to bet on some of these teams that we've seen accomplish more than what this team had done. But this was clearly, in retrospect, as you said, pointing back to these series, this was clearly the best team. This was the best unit, performing as a unit, the role players doing what they needed to do, performing at a high level, and a superstar Nikola Jokic taking over whole series, dominating whole series, just the way you need a superstar to do in the NBA Finals. I mean, it was the perfect run, arguably the perfect run, right? They lost 4 games. It doesn't get much better than that. So, I mean, I'm just extremely impressed with this Nuggets team, and I didn't see this coming. I really never thought Denver would be a team that would win a title. It just never crossed my mind, and I should have given them more credit. Honestly, I really should have.
And I think that this is an NBA fans, NBA analysts, NBA as a whole problem, is that Nikola Jokic is probably the most least assuming superstar that we have in that league right now. And when you look at teams that you expect to win titles, you look at the KD Devin Booker tandems, right? You look at the LeBron AD tandems. You look at the big name superstars that have put themselves out there on the forefront and make them, and market themselves really. And you see those names on those rosters and you go, that's the team that's going to win a title. When you look at Denver, you have Nikola Jokic, who is now, if he wasn't before, he is now a superstar in this league with exceptionally good complementary players, great role players, and you don't think that team can get it done because it's not a flashy KD Devin Booker type tandem. It's Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Like, that's what it is. So, like, and that tandem right now might be one of the best, if not the best tandem in the league. And it's self-evident in this championship run. And so, like, the unassummingness of Nikola Jokic, I think, is what maybe held people back from assuming that or thinking, Denver could possibly make a title run.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely think that has a part in it. And, yeah, I mean, you talk about Jamal Murray. I mean, Jamal Murray is a fantastic player. Obviously, we knew that before this playoff run. He proved that he is really special in this finals run, but it's a guy who's never made an all-star. He's never been an all-star. So he doesn't get aggregated in those lists that everybody looks at and sees of the best players, right? Because that's how we rank players, is accolades and this and that, right? And so Jamal Murray just never gets looped in with the Dames and the Stephs and all the great guards in the Western Conference, right? He's just sort of been underlooked, even though he's been a great player. And this was a chance for him to prove himself, and he obviously did in this. Extremely impressive. I think with Jokic, Mitch, one of my takeaways from this series and sort of maybe how this affects the NBA moving forward, I think Jokic is going to have a Shaq-esque effect on the NBA moving forward from this NBA Finals. And what I mean by that is, if you remember back to the early 2000s when the Lakers three-peat was happening and the Shaq domination was happening, teams changed the way that they looked at their rosters and their lineups to work with competing against the unstoppable force that was Shaquille O'Neal. So what did you have to do? You had to have two big-ass guys that could afford to get 6 fouls a game, right? You had to have big bodies, and you had to have a bunch of them to throw at Shaq because you needed to play a war of attrition with him to stop him. And I think in a different way, but having a similar effect, we're going to see that with Nikola Jokic, how dominant he is in the paint and how much that just opens everything else up for that team. If you want to compete in the West, frankly, and if you want to compete in the NBA, you got to look at that and say, we got to have big bodies to throw at him. We got to have guys that can guard him and can, that you're not throwing these Max Strus or Kyle Lowry on him in these switches, that you have big bodies all up on the court that can play with Jokic, that can play with the Jokic, Gordon, MPJ combination. I mean, that is a ton of size, a ton of length on the court at one time, and teams are going to have to adjust to that moving forward. So I think we'll see in this, starting with this offseason, a considerable move from Western Conference contenders to reshape their rosters to combat with the force that is Nikola Jokic. And that's just a credit to how great of a player he is.
Yeah. I mean, he's the first time in a while, a truly dominant big man. And so, we're going to probably see that move to that stop the big man type style of roster. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Nikola Jokic, again, 2-time MVP, wins the finals MVP in this one. I think this is always an interesting thing to cover. I have one little thought on this, and then I'll let you sort of share your last thoughts on the finals. But, we look at sort of the great superstars and when they win that first ring. There's an age range, there's an age date that most people point to. That's the age of 27. Most of the great superstars in NBA history won their first ring as the best player on a title team when they were 27 years old, right? Steph was 27 when he won his first NBA title. LeBron was 27. MJ was 28. Kevin Durant was 28. Moses Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, both 28. Those are just a few names to point at. Nikola Jokic, 28 this year, wins his first NBA title. We just had Giannis Antetokounmpo a few years ago win it at the age of 26, so a little bit earlier. So I just wanted to throw out, Mitch, a few names of guys that could potentially be the next to join this list, right? Who's the next great superstar to be the best player on a title team and join this sort of illustrious group. So I pulled some names. These are all players that were top 10 in MVP voting last season. And these are all players who do not have an NBA title. So I'm going to read some of these names. Give me your thoughts on what names stand out as the next guys to potentially accomplish this feat or join this list. Okay. And I'm going to give you their ages as well. So we'll start with the guys right in this range. So little young, but Luka Doncic is 25 in February. So maybe he's still a couple years away, but sort of we can start kind of thinking about him in this age range. Jason Tatum turns 26 in March. Donovan Mitchell, 27 in September. Devin Booker, 27 in September. Joel Embiid, 30 in March. So maybe he's a little on the older side. I brought up two names in here I thought were kind of interesting because I didn't know which one to pick. If you consider these Sacramento Kings players, I don't know which one would be the best player on the team. Maybe that's debatable, but Sabonis is 28. De'Aaron Fox will turn 26. So if the Kings were to make a run, one of those guys, maybe potentially. And then on the older side, but in this exercise top 10 in voting, Jimmy Butler will be 34 in September. And then Dame Lillard, he'll turn 33 in July. So of those names, in this sort of conversation, who do you think is that next great superstar to, lead to be the best player on an NBA title team?
I mean, Doncic is obviously enticing, but I don't have enough faith in the Dallas front office if he stays in Dallas,
right?
For them to actually put together a winner around him. Jason Tatum would be the easy pick, I think, because Boston, I feel like right now of those names you named, that team is the closest to getting it done. But I don't want to sleep on De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis either. I'm going to say De'Aaron Fox because I think Domantas Sabonis should get moved out of Sacramento. I think he's more of a liability as far as turnovers and when you talk about the swing of what the Western Conference is going to have to do to stop guys like Nikola Jokic, Domantas Sabonis does not fit that role. He's an undersized big man. So they're going to have to address that position in a different way. So I wouldn't sleep on De'Aaron Fox either because I think that Kings team is really, really talented even without Sabonis. And I think they can upgrade at that position as well. So those are kind of the three that stick out. And then, just to throw the last one, Devin Booker, that seems to have been so good for so long. You feel like it has to click at some point, but who knows if that's with KD there or not. So.
Yeah, and that's a good question too, and that's why I think this distinction is really important. Best player on a finals team, right? Like Kobe won his first ring at like 21. He was not the best player on those Lakers teams, right? It was Shaq. Shaq was the best player on those teams. So, you can't give Kobe, he doesn't really get the same sort of credit there. He had to earn it a little later on in his career when then he was the best player on those teams. Then he was in his, late 20s, right around the same age. So when we look at stars and you're like, Tatum, well, they haven't done it, or Booker, well, they haven't done it. Those are the two guys I look at because both those players have been to an NBA Finals and have fallen short already. So they've gotten there, they've gotten the taste, they've gotten the experience at a very young age, right? Sub 25. And now as the years go by, they get older, they get better. Then they lead that team to the championship. They get that. Those are the two. The one that I think I was really impressed what he did this year with his new team in Cleveland, but Donovan Mitchell is the one name that I've always felt Donovan has so much D Wade in him. It makes so much sense why him and D Wade are so close that he's been a mentor for him in his time in the league. But I think he could have a D Wade type run, right? Where D Wade had that 1 year in Miami. He was the best player on that Miami team. And that wasn't really like a stacked, loaded Miami team, but they just sort of made that run and made it happen. And I think Donovan could have a season like that where he's good enough to lead a team to the finals. He was 6th in MVP voting this year, averaged 28 points a game. So, I think he's just getting, continuing to grow there, and he's right in that age range. So I thought that was interesting as we look ahead because Jokic was sort of that next one after Giannis had checked it off. It's like, 2-time MVP Jokic, he'll probably get it. Tatum, Doncic, D-Book. So just something to think about.